today we have Jonathan Smith, who is actually a, I will say a trading teacher. But Jonathan, could you introduce yourself? We would like to hear about you.
Sure. Thanks very much, Carol. I've been called many things in my time. Trading teacher is a new one. I think, and I'm coming to the end of my career now, and it goes by very quickly. I think I would like to be known as primarily an odds compiler. Today we're going to talk about maybe perhaps where the industry has been, where it's going, and the role of pricing within the industry now. I think when I die on my tombstone, it's going to say he was an odds compiler. The fact that I've managed to parlay that into a teaching business it's been wonderful. It's been great fun because I am very enthusiastic about spreading the word. Helping people, helping the young people like yourselves. But first and foremost, I'm an odds compiler. I think about pricing all the time.
Hmm.
Even now, I'm pricing up the darts for the weekend. I love the intellectual challenge that it brings. So, I've been very fortunate to work in the industry doing this because it is fun. It's hard work, but there's many other things that I could be doing, but this has been the best one of the lot.
Awesome, awesome, Jonathan. Yeah, you've been in the industry for over 25 years, and so you started as an odds compiler, but what was the force behind that when you decided, okay, I don't want to be only odds compiler, but as well I want to teach people.
Well, yeah, it's a good question. I'm partly out of necessity. I had to change, and I think you have to view this in the context of where the industry has moved from and to, and for people like me who are in their late 30s, early 40s, when it was happening. So in the 1990s, and by the way, my first job in sports betting was as a bookmaker's clerk in 1989 on the road. So that's 35 years ago,
Wow.
when you were just a twinkle in your father's eye. Once you're in, you're hooked, and I was hooked from a very early stage. And I was,
Mhm.
when I left university, I had no idea what I was going to do. It just happened through luck and hard work. But back to your question, the transition was not really a decision that I was able to make myself. In the late 1990s, early 2000s, people like me were in reasonably high demand because we were reasonably good at our jobs, and the process, the way in which we disseminated pricing to the retail outlets, the shops, in other words, was pretty straightforward. We'd have some information, we'd think about it for a little while, we'd come up with some prices, we'd send them away. In my case, it was at Ladbrokes, and that would be that. As soon as the internet came in, and 24/7 betting, the
Mhm.
way people consumed the product, the pricing product, became different. It meant that more efficient methods of price delivery were required. Models and technology that I had no particular idea about. I don't have a particularly mathematical background. I certainly don't have
Mhm.
a technological background, because this stuff didn't exist 25, 30 years ago. So that being said, it became obvious, and I could see the change coming from far off. The reliance on individuals to make prices was replaced by an infrastructure, a process that the likes of BetRadar, BetGenius, and all the suppliers took over. Therefore, old dinosaurs like me became less important in that process. And so around about 2014, 15,
Mhm.
I could see myself becoming less important in the process, even though I had quite a bit of experience. And I was working for a company called Sporting Group at the time, Sporting Solutions, their supply arm,
Mm-hmm.
and their customers were querying price output, price origin, understanding models, and so forth. And it just so happened I was pretty good at explaining all of that because I had a long history, and I found that I was enjoying it. I was enjoying the education and the entertainment part of it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And a good friend of mine, Simon Trim, said, "Look, you're pretty good at explaining all this. Have you thought of changing direction and doing it, doing a little bit more of it?" And it was a good idea. He's full of good ideas, and I thought I'll give it a go actually. And he'd be a wonderful person to talk to. And so in late 2015, early 2016, I think it was, I had no particular expectation that it would succeed, but here we are, 8 years later, and it's been beyond my wildest expectations. I still compile odds because I still bet a lot, but and obviously we build the models now and so forth. But educating the younger generation in what I think is quite a simple bit of the process. It's been wonderful fun. I've met some wonderful people all around the world, like yourself, and long may it continue.
Okay, yeah, Jonathan, what a way to be honest. And you've landed. Could you tell us about like what clients do you have right now? Because as you mentioned, you've never thought that the training business will be successful. And right now, where are you at right now?
Yeah, I did. I didn't think it was. Well, I wasn't sure, and actually, I'll tell you one entertaining story.
Mm-hmm.
Almost straight away, I had an email from somebody in New Zealand, Simon Thomas, he was called,
Mm-hmm.
saying he'd like me to come down for 2 weeks to New Zealand to train his traders who were working at, I think it was the New Zealand Horse Racing Board they were called. And instantly I just thought that was a practical joke somebody was playing on me. It
Mm-hmm.
was a dream first gig. And so I ignored it for a few days or a week or something like that. And he came back to me and said, "Look, any thoughts on this?" And it was only then I realised, oh, actually, this is a real inquiry. Somebody has seen the website. I'd set up a cheap website using WordPress, and they were actually interested. And that was pretty much my first job, going down to New Zealand. Left the family for 2 weeks, flew via Singapore, and just didn't know what to expect. And just found the whole process of teaching young people on the trading floor really really fulfilling. And I never really had to advertise other than the website after that. Domestic firms, international firms, everybody wanted teaching, and so I've been pretty much everywhere. Africa's the only place I haven't been, although I've had clients in
Mm-hmm.
Africa. As to who we have on the books at the moment, I'm just looking at what the work schedule I've got at the moment. I've just come back from excuse me, Estonia to train some people at Olibet, which was a wonderful experience in
Mm-hmm.
Tallinn. I should be going over to Vienna again to do some more work with Austrian bookmakers shortly. Next month in Costa Rica, which is somewhere I haven't been, and we might touch on this later. I really enjoy the face-to-face stuff. It's not as easy to
Mm-hmm.
travel the older you get, but obviously the online business of teaching, just endless amounts of work, and that's great fun. So plenty to shoot for, and I'm very lucky that I can do this.
Yeah, that sounds awesome when you can travel while, spreading your knowledge and basically combining the travel with your work. I mean, I think most of us dream to have a job like this.
Well, it wasn't by design. In fact, I've got 3 children, and I always ask them, what do you want to do for a living? And My youngest daughter, at least, has got no particular idea at all, and I still have no idea. I say I still don't know what I want to do, and I'm nearly finished. So it just happened. What would I put it down to? Yeah, just hard work, actually,
Mm-hmm.
Kirill, and trying to make something happen. And certainly in the second part of my career, when I've been self-employed, working for myself, you just have to try to make something happen and see if it works, and take that chance. So that I think, it is work, but that would be my advice. If you've got an idea, and obviously you've got plenty of ideas, go with it. See if it works. What's the
Mm-hmm.
worst that can happen?
Nothing. It just doesn't work, and that's it.
Yeah, just move on to the next thing. It's business at the end of the day. Not everything I have done has been a success, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I can think of several. I'm smiling to myself because I can think of one in particular. In fact, I'm going to tell your audiences anyway. So I
Mm-hmm.
did the online courses, and I've had quite a lot of interest from Spain, from Spanish, from Latin America, Spanish-speaking countries. And I thought, oh, wouldn't it be good to turn one of these courses, translate it into Spanish?
Mm-hmm.
That cost me a lot of money, and it did
Mm-hmm.
not sell very well. So I lost money on that. But I tried it, and it's there if people still want it. And yeah, I would say, yeah, you're not going to succeed in everything. Some of the things that you will do will fall flat on their face, and I've got a few that is doing that at the moment. But
Mm-hmm.
it's just about finding enough things that will work for you to keep you ahead of the game.
Mm-hmm. Got you, got you. Yeah, thank you for this business advice for me and for everyone who is watching. We'll get back a little bit to what you do into details. And you mentioned that 20 years ago, when you started, oh, I'm sorry, 20 years, 35.
Keep
Uh,
going, keep going. I'm going to get my coffee, by the way. There we are.
it, yeah, when you started, you've created odds for Let's Brook, I'm sorry, right? Is
Yeah,
it
they
correct?
were at one time the biggest bookmaker in the UK. They had about trying to think, about 3,000 shops. They were one of what we called the big three retail outlets. And of course, in the 1990s, yes, they had telephone betting, but
Mm-hmm.
they only had shops. There was no internet. So
Mm-hmm.
and there were a lot of impediments to the customer, not least tax on wages that the customer placed, but also restrictions on, certainly in football, on the
Mm-hmm.
types of bets that you could have. You couldn't have single bets on football matches and so on. Anyway, that was a long time ago, and that was, in terms of price making, that's where I cut my teeth. That's where I started. Yeah.
Yeah, and my question to you is that like today we have plans of data. You could find a lot of data in the internet, and yeah, it is much easier to now to create those right predictions and models and etc. You have AI, you have systems, but back then when you had nothing, how
We
like
had nothing. We had
yeah,
nothing. Yeah.
yeah, how were you able to create these thoughts? Where have you gained data from, and how does it work?
My dad, God bless him, he said something that resonates with me to this day. The people that will succeed are the people that have the information. Who has more
Mm-hmm.
information? Who has the best information? Not just in sports betting, but in every walk of life. And he was right. When I think back to the late 80s and early 90s, when I was a bookmaker's clerk on the racecourse, we would
Mm-hmm.
drive. We would drive in the bookmaker's car, and this was to fund my student debt, working for somebody else. And you would sit in the back of the car, and you would look at what the trade newspapers, the Sporting Life or the Racing Post at the time. That was your information. And in actual fact, when we talk about process, the process of price discovery hasn't changed. It's just you have some information, you have a think, and you put up your
Mm-hmm.
price and the customer bets on it. That's essentially what happens at the race course. It's just become a lot more streamlined and a lot more efficient nowadays. But because we'd sit in the back of the car and have a think about what we wanted to do and so forth, and I played a very minor role in that. When we sort of skip forward to full time paid employment, we would sit around a desk. There'd be five or six of us in Ladbrokes, and we would have whatever information we had to hand. Remember, no internet, so
Mm-hmm.
I always tell this story. If I can remember doing the Tour de France with a friend and at Ladbrokes, and we would go to the local newsagents in
Mm-hmm.
Rayners Lane and buy Cycling Weekly or Cycling Monthly or whatever it was, the Tour de France official guide. That would be all you would have in
Mm-hmm.
your battle against the. So if somebody had better information than you, they were more likely to be more successful. But that's how it worked. When boxing, which is professional boxing, which happened to be one of my sort of specialist subjects, the only reason I think I was a bit better than other people was that I would source as much information as I could. Again, not off the internet, but through trade magazines, videos flown in from abroad for me to watch these things. And again, once you, even though you've got that information, and now you have a lot more access to information in the modern era, there still comes a point, and I wrote this in my notes. There still comes a point where you have to, with all that information at your fingertips, and you've got a grasp of it, is to have an innate feel for what seems to be right.
Mm-hmm.
Even if the data is, most of the time the data will tell you one thing and it'll be the right thing, but numbers on their own will not necessarily give you the answer you're looking for, not only as an odds maker, but as a bettor as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for the people that watch your show that are interested in trying to be a bit more successful at betting, there's more to it than pure numbers. But my goodness, numbers and data are like gold, gold
Mm-hmm.
dust. They're so important, and we're very fortunate in this day and age that we can get very granular information if we need it.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the sports I bet in, we don't need it, but it's there if you want it. But yeah, I guess it's like any industry. It just evolves, doesn't it? It just gets more and more efficient. But that's how we started.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, Carol, whether you're working 25, 30 years ago or today, someone still has to press the button and say, right, that is the final estimation of probability.
Okay, I completely agree on you with that because, like as an ex-player, when I used to play ice hockey, and obviously, I played hockey and we had some, bets from the books who were putting the bets on us, and I've seen the odds. And the numbers might say one thing, but let's say if you're a player and then you're in the team, sometimes you can feel that you will win even though the opponent might be higher, and sometimes you could have this internal spirit within the team that beats all the numbers, and that couldn't be countable. It's really hard to predict. So I completely agree that numbers are important, data is important, but like you said, at the end of the day, it's a person who is deciding, and there is a human element into it.
Yeah, it helps you make a better decision. That's all,
Hmm.
really. And crucially, it stops you from making really bad decisions. And I can
Hmm.
tell you, and no one is immune from this, we would make really bad decisions in pricing terms because we didn't have that breadth of data that we have access to now. I can think of plenty of times where I've made poor pricing because you didn't have much to go on. And
Hmm.
actually, even if you did, you'd still, no one is immune to mistakes. And yeah, one day I'll write a book about mistakes that were made. That's
Jonathan,
what
we
that's what I'm
we
trying.
we are waiting for your book for sure.
Yeah,
Okay, I got your word. Okay, it's recorded right now,
yeah,
so
okay.
no
All
way
right,
back.
good.
Okay. So, could you say that back then, when you started, it was more about guesswork to create these thoughts and feeling like 90, no, not 90, but let's say 70% of that was just kind of a feeling.
So, yeah, that would be my experience, and it is partly because, as I said, partly because we didn't have the information, but partly because the role of simple mathematics, and probability
Mm-hmm.
wasn't well understood by the people that were working in that industry at the
Mm-hmm.
time, including me, by the way. And
Mm-hmm.
but and again, I can think of football departments where I've worked where people didn't understand the relationship between goals and mathematical distributions and so forth. But as at the same time as the industry changed to become more technology based, it was required learning that people understood how we can come up with more prices better, more of the time, more quickly to serve that technological platform that was being built, and maths was at the forefront of that. And of course, the people that were successful as bettors in the late 1990s, early 2000s, in sports betting in particular, bear in mind, prior to the internet, we had horse racing and football, and horse racing was the dominant force in the UK market at any rate
Mm-hmm.
until the late 1990s. Well, there's not a lot of maths in horse racing. There's plenty of
Mm-hmm.
maths in football, but it just wasn't necessary pre-internet, and because we were less exposed to the people that were able to do this and could exploit it if they could do it, because they couldn't exploit it up until the internet, because there were so many impediments to get those types of bets on. They just didn't exist. So to go back to your original question, were we as good at it then as we are now? No, we're much better at it now.
Mm-hmm.
People of my age tend to look back on the past with rose-tinted spectacles, but absolutely, we are better judges of probability now than we were then.
Of course, yeah, since the world is, in any space, all right? Our world is growing. We have AI, we have, all of this technology, and of course, we are better right now. Let's talk about the future right now, a future of a sports trader. And do you ever see that machines will replace people? And of course, do you how accurate do you think the pricing will be in the future in terms of, let's say, percentages? So just a general question on your thoughts in future.
That's a lot of questions, actually. I did write some notes down about this, but I'm going to sort of go off topic. Will machines replace humans?
Mm-hmm.
I think they have to. I think they have to a certain extent already, insofar as the processes of the big supply companies of pricing rely a lot on mass technology to get the prices out of the door, and consequently, prices are worse, not better, because they don't have the oversight of individuals that really know what they're doing. This might be a bit unfair,
Mm-hmm.
but actually, I don't think we're taking advantage of the new technology that you are obviously familiar with, because we don't have the quality yet of the people that could exploit and make advantage of this great technology.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, because the supply process, the third party process, has become so far removed from the sort of stuff that I did in the 80s and 90s, because
Mm-hmm.
it is process now, wherein the pricing element of it is probably the least important part of it. We're thinking about platform integration, settlement logic, all the other stuff that coding and so forth has content creation and live streaming and data feeds and so forth. That has become the important part of the process. That obviously I can't do that, and actually pricing has become much less important than it used to be. That being said, I'm now finding, and this will be the second line of my on my tombstone. The top line will say odds compiler. The second line will say I told you so. You'll still be alive in 30 years to find out if it's true. But I think operators will now want to regain control of the product that they had outsourced to suppliers for good reason, because they eventually will realize we can do much of this ourselves. We can do a lot of the pricing element ourselves, because I think I said to you a few weeks ago, it's not that difficult. If it were difficult, I wouldn't be doing it, because I'm not that bright. I didn't do maths at college or anything like that. It just takes hard work and common sense. Now, if I had access to the sort of intelligence and AI and that's on its way down the road, yeah, that would be great as well. And so perhaps the last couple of years of my employment will be mixing up teaching and using these models. I mean, it's sort of happening now, because we are in the modern era. I've had to learn a lot of the stuff that coders and developers and whatnot tell me, such that I can speak their language.
Mm-hmm.
Will they ever replace? I think the last part of your question was, will they ever replace human beings? No, because I
Mm-hmm.
don't think they will. I don't think they will, because they still need somebody that can exploit what the technology they're using. So your outputs, what the model is telling you, will only ever be as good as the inputs that you are feeding it, no matter
Mm-hmm.
no matter how clever it is. So does that answer all your questions?
Yes. Jonathan, can you say, let's say we are pretending to create a catchy headline, right? And can you say that operators and sport books are losing a lot of money by using suppliers while they could do it themselves mostly? And this will be the future.
I wouldn't say they're losing a lot of money, because the benefit of the suppliers is that they can do it at scale, and this is the
Mm-hmm.
reason why people like me and people in there. And I see a lot of my contemporaries now looking around thinking, well, what do I do for the remaining 10, 15, 20 years of my professional career? And I guess I ask myself the same question as well, because they were taken over by the suppliers. The suppliers do what they do well at scale. So imagine them being like McDonald's. You're hungry, you
Mm-hmm.
don't know where to eat. You go to McDonald's. It's not very satisfying, but it does the job, and it does it quickly to millions and millions of people. That really is how I view the suppliers. So they do what they do best. But I think as technology becomes cheaper to run as well, some of the operators, and certainly some of the operators I talk to nowadays, that want their own suite of models, that want to be able to control their product from within, they're suddenly realizing, actually we could do this if we've got sufficient resources. It's not going to be for everyone. You know, the white label firms, the small firms that operate on a revenue share, but for the bigger clients around the world that I deal with, yes, they want their own models. Yes, they want their own trading teams, because they want to keep more of the money themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. I think that the big problem over here is that most of these suppliers are also owning the rights for the leaks, right, and for the data. And here where the main problem comes on, I think.
Absolutely, yeah, and data is so expensive now. There will come a point where people will say, actually, I can't afford what you're
Mm-hmm.
asking for it, because if you want that live feed from the ATP umpire's chair, you've got to go to one particular supplier. And when Opta, for example, you might have to
Mm-hmm.
go somewhere else for football stats and so forth. And when we see big companies in America purchasing other companies that have these data rights, so as to prevent other people from having access to it, it must make you think, well, actually, I'm going to be vulnerable here
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not going to have access to what I need. It may well be cheaper to do it, to find a solution in house rather than be at the mercy of other mergers and acquisitions. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the direction of travel I see, and of course it goes by really quickly, Kirill. A minute
Mm-hmm.
ago it was 2000, and I was enjoying myself. Here we are, it's 2024. I'm still enjoying myself, but I'm running out of professional road to find out
Mm-hmm.
if I'm right. But that I think that's the way I can see the direction of travel. Operators reclaiming some of the process, not because they're dissatisfied, they may be, but not because they're dissatisfied with the output, but because they are able to do it, not just in pricing, but in all the other parts of the product. They can do it in
Mm-hmm.
house, and that makes perfect sense to me.
Yes, for me, I would say, it's really interesting at this point that in the future I see, and you could say if you agree on it or not, but I have no idea at this moment why those big leagues are not selling data themselves, and maybe they could even create odds themselves. Let's say NFL. I'm not sure why they're selling the data to Sportradar, and Sportradar sells it further. And like in future, what I see, the leagues and federations will be getting smarter and might have their own trading teams and might sell the data to the end consumers like sportbooks.
Yeah, that's not unreasonable. Excuse me. I guess in America there's always been some integrity questions or morality questions, if you like, around sports betting and the general
Mm-hmm.
public and the integrity of professional sports, which is valued very highly over there. And it may be different in other countries. Of course, lack of knowledge of what sports betting is all about
Mm-hmm.
that's been one of the reasons, actually, I continue to be able to go and work with these companies because, for the most part, most people, this is sports betting is a complete mystery to them. So
Mm-hmm.
they'll do what they do. They'll produce the data and from their particular sport, but actually, it's not something that needs to concern them. At least until now, it has been for other people and in the UK, at any rate, the relationship between sports governing bodies and gambling might be under pressure because of integrity, morality, and gambling awareness and harm prevention and so forth. So maybe it may be different in other countries, but it may well be that actually betting is not the most important thing in the world to other people, and I guess that's probably right. Most people outside of our industry have neither the interest or the desire to have an interest in sports betting. We are a very small cog in the wheel of sport, whether it's amateur sport or professional sport. We just we just happen to be a function of it. Sport will exist without us,
Mm-hmm.
whereas we cannot exist without sport.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, that's philosophical thoughts about,
Very
but
very rare for me. Certainly at 1 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon.
yeah.
In actual fact, when I see discourse and hear my friends complaining about this, that, and the other in relation to sport and betting, I just think, well, actually, most of the time, we shouldn't be worried about betting. Sport should worry about itself. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we're lucky that we're able to be involved in some form, but sport does not exist to service the needs of operator, supplier, bettor. It's there, and thank goodness it is.
Yes, completely agree. All right, so Jonathan, we'll be ending the recording soon, but I want to ask you a couple quick questions, okay?
Mm,
And you are not prepared for them. Who is your favorite
no.
student?
Um,
you had.
I know exactly who this is actually. I've got a lot of Greek friends as a result of teaching, and they are to a man and woman wonderful people. Uh, this fella's name is Yanis Polychronopoulos, and he's currently in Beijing. He will never get to see this, but
Hmm.
he contacted me out of the blue one time for tuition training and so forth, and we just became friends now, and that's the way it is. And I'm very grateful for that because he's taught me a lot about Greece. So he's my favourite guy.
Okay, great. Nice to hear. Then, what is the favorite sport for you?
Favorite and best are two different things. I think the best sport in the world, from professional terms, is Test cricket. Actually, it's probably not something you're familiar with in Ukraine.
Yeah.
However, my favorite sport is boxing, and in particular amateur boxing nowadays. Used to be professional boxing, but yeah, I'm a licensed coach nowadays for amateurs because it's real sport and people are competing for the love of the sport and not for money. So probably amateur sport is the most pure form of it, and for me it happens to be amateur boxing.
Okay, yeah. By the way, we forgot to mention that Jonathan is a coach, is a boxing coach, and that's
And of course,
awesome.
you've got some very famous Ukrainian boxers as well, haven't you? So,
Yeah, yeah, we have a couple of them, but I'm not really big a boxing guy, but everyone knows Usyk or Lomachenko.
yeah, and the Klitschko brothers, of course, as well. But Usyk is a credit to the sport, both as an amateur and a professional. So, yeah, I'd guess certainly in later life, amateur boxing is something I'm very fond of.
Okay, who is your favorite bookmaker or sport? Like, who do you think the best one?
Um, I'm going to not that I bet very much with them. I'm going to say, I mean, in the hierarchy of professional jobs in England, at any rate, we have estate agents, lawyers,
Hmm.
and bookmakers, and we are right at the bottom. We are the worst of the worst, in terms of integrity and morality. I think the best is William Hill. Actually, I'm going to say for
Okay.
reasons I won't. But a warning to aspiring odds compilers and bettors. Bet365 is the biggest,
Hmm.
but and I speak to traders all around the world. But no, don't necessarily assume that they're any different or better than you. You can do the job at least as well as they can. So try and avert your gaze from the green and gold of Bet365's website. Try and price up something yourself. But in terms of quality of pricing, as a bettor, I found it more difficult to win money from William Hill than other firms. So that would be my that would be my measuring stick.
Okay, so you don't bet a lot with them because it's harder to win.
And they won't let me on certain sports, I have to say, but that's another matter. But no, I think as an all-round product, I think they do it pretty well.
Okay, so we have missed that, but do you bet yourself and do you make money by betting?
Do you ask this question of everybody?
No, not really.
Yes, I do. And part of the reason I do is that it's an intellectual challenge. If I'm trying to
Hmm.
explain a sport and the odds compilation method, then I really want to know that it works. And of course,
Hmm. Yeah.
there are two strands to this. When you are making odds for a sports book, you are trying to be the market. You want to be
Hmm.
near the market price because, by and large, in most sports, the market price is right in inverted commas. So
Hmm.
you want to find methods that are, broadly speaking, right because they're never going to be far away from the truth. As a bettor, you have to work a little bit harder and use slightly different methods, but there's not much difference. I just put some extra ingredients into the pot, and of course, in principle, you have access to a number of different price sources and
Mm-hmm.
outlets in the market, and that you then have to create a strategy to get accommodated. So the answer is yes, I do bet, but and it's really useful to keep you just practice. I don't compete in boxing anymore, but I still practice.
Mm-hmm.
I still go
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I still go to the gym and work on my footwork and on the bags and so forth. So you have to keep practicing at what you do, certainly as an odds maker.
Yeah, agree. Any thoughts at the end of the recording? Any thoughts that or insights you would love to share with our listeners?
If your listeners, I mean, we could talk for hours, Kirill. If your listeners are working in the industry, as I've been lucky enough to do so for the last 30 years or so, and I say this to my kids as well that are doing whatever it is they want to do, take chances. If there's one regret I have from a professional standpoint is I didn't take as many risks as I could have done because
Mm-hmm.
I know it seems like a long time, but this career has gone by awful quick,
Mm-hmm.
and so yeah, don't be scared of trying something new. I think we touched on that a little bit earlier. It doesn't have to be betting related, of course, and I'm not especially talking about risking your own money. But if you get an opportunity to do something, an opportunity to try something new, rather than remaining in the comfort of you know, paid employment, for example, the job that you're doing, then take it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if there's one thing I've learned from the last 10 years or so of self-employment is that taking chances and them succeeding or failing is very fulfilling, and
Mm-hmm.
you succeed or fail on your own terms as opposed to somebody else's. So yeah, take more risks. That's my answer.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Jonathan. So I wanted also to share that Jonathan has his own website and his own course on training the traders. So we will add the link, and you will join there, and you will have a discount if you are interested to becoming a highly skilled trader and to improve your skills. Jonathan, where can our listeners find you and follow your work?
Well, thanks to the power of the internet, you can find out all about me, my work, and the courses and so forth at my website, which is sportsbooktraining.com. That's all one word. It's all fairly self-explanatory. And once you contact me, then you never know where it'll go. I've got over 4,000 students via the internet that many of whom I speak to on a daily basis. Yeah, once you get in touch, you'll never hear the end of me.
Okay, yeah, and we might, for those who are listening to us, we might do a small, workshop or webinar with Jonathan in future where he could actually show his screen and how he does, odds compiling and just teach us a little bit. And yeah, it might be an opportunity for those of you who are interested to see more. And we will be discussing this with Jonathan.
Great. Thanks very much for your time, Carol. As always, it's a pleasure to speak to you, and hopefully we can come back to this again in the future.
Yeah, thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for the value you shared. It was great to have you. And guys, reach out to Jonathan because he's a real professional. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.